Hello everyone, and welcome to my Young and Restless official. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Traci gazed at Alan's phone message regarding a security breach while she was in her hotel suite. When Alan came out of the restroom and saw Traci clutching his phone, he froze. "What are you doing?" he demanded. Although Traci regretfully vowed she hadn't been prying, she had suspected something was amiss since Alan's phone had been making an odd noise. She mentioned the security breach alert and the measures being taken. Alan read the message and grabbed the phone from Traci. She prayed that she had not irritated him. He said that although he had no idea what the messages were about, he had stopped checking his phone since he thought it had been hacked after receiving notifications a few days prior. When he saw her using his phone, he overreacted and pleaded for her pardon. Traci quickly extended forgiveness to Alan and expressed regret for not realizing that the contents of his phone might be private. If he was worried that a hacker would access his data, she advised him to acquire a new phone. Although Alan acknowledged that it had been foolish of him to ignore the phone, he had wished to exercise additional caution. Traci recalled that after he had purchased the engagement ring, he had texted her from his phone. Alan explained that he had forgotten about the danger since he was so eager to see his lovely fiancée again. As a therapist, Alan thought it could be interesting to learn what it was like to have his identity stolen, but he also believed that if he had already been hacked, it was too late to take any action. Alan pictured the psychological damage that would result from being robbed of his identity by a criminal who was exploiting it for evil. Traci mentioned that he had experienced the same thing when Martin had posed as Alan. Alan brought up the wedding again. Traci debated whether to hold the event in Paris or at the Abbott residence. She admitted that not all of Alan's Parisian recollections were positive. They kissed and Alan vowed that Traci had made him so happy that he had forgotten the unpleasant portions. He stated that as long as he was marrying her, he didn't care where the ceremony took place. Traci wondered what kind of attack it might be when Alan's phone started to ping with more security notifications. Alan angrily questioned why Traci was inquiring about his phone so much. So that it wouldn't annoy her any longer, he turned it off. He apologized for losing his temper, and Traci claimed that she had assumed it would upset him. The fact that they were engaged, in love, and going to live out the rest of their lives together was all that counted, according to Alan. He suggested that they take a plane to Paris so they could look at potential locations. At the athletic club, Daniel and Summer were ecstatic to see Phyllis again. Phyllis enjoyed a burger and wine, relishing the fact that she had a non-poisonous eating option. Daniel persuaded Phyllis to tell them everything, and Summer urged her mother not to act as like nothing was wrong. Phyllis remembered waking up with Sharon at the deserted mental hospital and not knowing how to get away. Daniel questioned whether the kidnapping had been a sick game and noted that there had been no demand for a ransom. Phyllis told her children that the abductor had made her and Sharon cooperate in order to escape, and that it had been a strange experiment. Summer was concerned that Phyllis was still in danger because the criminal had not yet been apprehended. Phyllis reassured her kids that she was protected by the police. Daniel was concerned that the kidnapper had gotten away with it, and Phyllis promised to find them herself. Phyllis reluctantly agreed to let the police handle it after Daniel cautioned her against becoming a vigilante. According to Phyllis, the captor had given them quizzes and riddles based on their past interactions because they were aware of her decades-long animosity toward Sharon. Phyllis described how she and Sharon had rescued each other. Daniel asked if working together had helped Phyllis and Sharon resolve their shared anger. Phyllis acknowledged that she and Sharon now recognized each other's advantages. Summer inquired as to whether Ian Ward might have lived and been responsible. Chance had informed her that Ian's body had been cremated, according to Phyllis. The fact that the abductor had not yet been apprehended obviously shaken her. Sally was shocked when Billy told her at his residence that he had played a part in finding Sharon and Phyllis. "I would have done anything to save Phyllis," he argued. Instead of trusting Phyllis, Billy thought he was being a jerk by removing her name from the press release and presuming she had betrayed him. Billy lamented not recognizing the problem sooner, but Sally advised him not to place the burden on himself. He said he was glad he had arrived before Sharon and Phyllis had died from the deliberate gas leak in the room. Billy lamented that until the kidnapper was apprehended, it wouldn't be over. Sally gave Billy a shoulder rub and praised him for taking such a big risk to support his buddies. Billy was delighted to turn in his cape and let Chance handle it while he elevated Abbott Communications to new heights, even if he still wanted to nail the individual. They shared a kiss as Sally gushed that his lack of a cape did not diminish his hero status. Billy and Sally tried to ignore the doorbell when it rang, but Phyllis called out to see whether Billy was there. Billy opened the door for Phyllis and noted that she appeared better than when he had last seen her. Before she asked to speak with him, he expressed surprise at seeing her out and about. Billy asked Phyllis what she wanted to talk about after Sally left for the office. Suppressing a cry, Phyllis said that she wasn't feeling well. He was the one person who could assist her, she added, and she needed her life back. Phyllis declared that she was prepared to launch the biggest, baddest launch ever at Abbott Communications. Billy encouraged her to take some time since they nearly lost her, even though she apologized for postponing the timeline. Phyllis broke down in tears as she talked about how she overcame her hardship by thinking about returning to Abbott Communications and seeing her children. With her son by her side, Phyllis imagined creating something solid and improving things. Since that was the only way she would be able to move past what had been taken from her, she emphasized that she needed it immediately. Billy told Phyllis that she shouldn't take on more than she could manage at that time, but she insisted that she needed the thrill of starting their business to help her get over it. She recommended that the press release be the first thing they do. Billy admitted that when he felt she had abandoned him, he had sent out the release without her name on it. Stumbling, Phyllis said she shouldn't worry about it. Billy acknowledged that he had erred since he was certain that Phyllis would never desert him or the business. Phyllis asked if it was a mercy thing or if he truly wanted her on board. Billy declared that she was the only person on the earth he wanted to start the business with and that he needed her fire. He begged for her forgiveness. "I forgive you, of course." She threw her arms around him and cried, "You saved my life." Chance gave a team of police officers instructions to investigate the room where Phyllis and Sharon had been detained in order to find clues as to who had abducted the women. Chance wanted to find evidence that would assist them identify the perpetrator and explain their relationship to Phyllis and Sharon, but he doubted they would find fingerprints other than the victims. Chance later discovered a gadget connected to the gas supply. Nick gave Sharon a brownie and a latte at Crimson Lights. She insisted that she was precisely where she wanted to be, where everyone was content and free, but he questioned whether she would prefer to be at home resting. "And I am now as well." She clutched his hand and looked into his eyes, exclaiming, "It's all because of you." Before losing control, Sharon realized how much she had taken for granted just going about her daily life and making simple decisions. Nick questioned her about any memories she might have that could help them figure out who had been responsible for the kidnapping. Sharon recalled that she and Phyllis had pondered whether it was a familiar face, such as one of their own children, who had been attempting to discipline them. "None of their children could do anything like that," Nick retorted. Nick referred to Sharon's agreement as extreme therapy. Nick asked if it had worked, and Sharon likened it to an attempted exorcism. Since they had to cooperate to solve puzzles in order to win the game and return home, Sharon found what she and Phyllis had gone through to be hilariously cathartic. Sharon reflected on how much the captor knew about her past with Phyllis, as well as their personalities and motivations. Because they had figured out how to set her and Phyllis against each other and force them to face their mistrust and animosity by making life-or-death decisions, she suspected the person had psychological experience. As though it had been some kind of perverted therapeutic session, Sharon likened it to aversion or desensitization therapy. Chance went into the coffee shop and told Nick and Sharon that he had taken many bags from the site. Chance revealed that he had verified with the landlord that the remote control connected to the gas connection had never been there before and that he had been able to track down its acquisition. According to Chance, the gadget was bought from a hardware store nearby the clinic. He planned to examine the store's security footage to determine whether Sharon or Phyllis recognized anyone there. Sharon expressed gratitude to Chance for his thoroughness and her confidence that he would apprehend the criminal responsible for the kidnapping. Chance remarked that if she left town to get her mind straight, nobody would hold it against her. Nick recommended that she and Faith travel to Europe to see Noah. Sharon consented to go as long as Nick accompanied them. Watch The Young and the Restless in its entirety on CBS or stream it on Paramount+. The scene in Traci and Alan's hotel suite was charged with tension and emotion, a microcosm of the larger dramas that often unfold in their lives. Traci, standing by the window, held Alan's phone in her hand, her eyes fixed on the screen. The message about a security breach had popped up, and the strange, persistent pinging had drawn her attention. She hadn't meant to intrude, but the urgency of the alerts had made her worry that something was seriously wrong. When Alan emerged from the bathroom, his face immediately darkened at the sight of her holding his phone. His voice was sharp as he demanded to know what she was doing. Traci, flustered, quickly apologized, explaining that she hadn't been snooping but had been concerned about the unusual activity on his device. She mentioned the security breach alert and the precautions being enacted, hoping to defuse the situation. Alan's reaction was swift. He snatched the phone from her hand, his eyes scanning the message. Traci watched him nervously, hoping she hadn't overstepped. Alan, after a moment, sighed and admitted that he didn't know what the messages were about. He revealed that he'd started receiving similar alerts a couple of days earlier and had stopped using his phone, fearing it had been hacked. His initial anger melted into regret as he apologized for overreacting. He begged Traci for forgiveness, acknowledging that his reaction had been disproportionate. Traci, ever understanding, readily forgave him and apologized in turn for not considering that his phone might contain private information. She suggested that he get a new phone if he was worried about a hacker accessing his data, a practical solution to what seemed like a growing problem. Alan admitted that it had been silly of him to avoid opening his phone, but he'd wanted to be extra cautious. Traci, trying to lighten the mood, reminded him that he'd sent her a text message from his phone after buying her engagement ring. Alan chuckled, attributing his lapse in caution to his excitement about returning to his beautiful fiancée. The tension between them eased as they laughed together, the momentary conflict forgotten. Alan mused that if he had already been hacked, it was too late to do anything about it. As a therapist, he found the idea of having his identity stolen intriguing, imagining the psychological toll it would take on someone to be stripped of their identity and used for nefarious purposes. Traci pointed out that he had already experienced something similar when Martin had pretended to be him, a painful memory that still lingered. The conversation shifted to more pleasant topics as Alan turned his attention back to their upcoming wedding. Traci, ever the romantic, contemplated whether they should have the ceremony at the Abbott house or in Paris. She acknowledged that not all of Alan's memories from Paris were wonderful, a subtle reference to the challenges they had faced in their relationship. Alan, however, was quick to reassure her. He swore that Traci had brought him so much joy that the bad memories had faded into insignificance. They shared a tender kiss, and Alan declared that he didn't care where the wedding took place as long as he was marrying her. His phone, however, interrupted the moment with another series of pings, drawing their attention back to the mysterious security breach. Traci couldn't help but wonder what kind of hack it could be, her curiosity piqued. Alan, growing testy, asked why Traci kept asking questions about his phone. He turned it off, determined not to let it bother them anymore. Traci defended her concern, explaining that she had thought it would bother him. Alan apologized for snapping, insisting that all that mattered was their love and their future together. He proposed that they jump on a plane to Paris to check out wedding venues, a spontaneous idea that delighted Traci. The couple's ability to navigate conflict and return to a place of love and understanding was a testament to the strength of their relationship. Meanwhile, at the athletic club, Daniel and Summer were overjoyed to reunite with their mother, Phyllis. Over burgers and wine, Phyllis reveled in the simple pleasure of eating food that hadn't been poisoned, a stark contrast to the ordeal she had recently endured. Summer, ever perceptive, encouraged her mother not to pretend that everything was fine. Daniel, too, urged Phyllis to tell them everything, his concern evident. Phyllis recounted waking up in the abandoned psychiatric clinic with Sharon, their initial confusion, and their desperate attempts to find a way out. The story was harrowing, and Daniel and Summer listened intently, their faces reflecting a mix of horror and relief. Daniel pointed out that there had been no ransom request, leading him to question whether the kidnapping had been some kind of sick game. Phyllis confirmed that it had been a bizarre experiment, one in which the captor had forced her and Sharon to work together to escape. Summer, ever the worrier, fretted that the culprit hadn't been caught, meaning Phyllis was still in danger. Phyllis assured her children that she had police protection, but the fear in her eyes was unmistakable. Daniel, too, was concerned, warning Phyllis against taking matters into her own hands. Phyllis, reluctantly, promised to let the police handle it, though her determination to find the person responsible was clear. Phyllis revealed that the captor had known about her decades-long feud with Sharon and had designed riddles and tests based on their history. She explained how she and Sharon had been forced to save each other's lives, a twist of fate that had brought them closer together. Daniel asked if the experience had helped them work through their mutual anger, and Phyllis conceded that they had developed a new appreciation for each other's strengths. Summer, ever the skeptic, wondered if Ian Ward could have been behind the kidnapping, but Phyllis assured her that Chance had confirmed Ian's body had been cremated. The fact that the kidnapper was still at large clearly shook Phyllis, and her children could see the toll it was taking on her. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, so please don't forget to subscribe my channel and don't miss any update.